This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Scottie Scheffler is unsurprisingly the runaway favorite for this week's U.S. Open at Oakmont Country Club, but a lot of other fun storylines and a lot of other big names that we could consider betting at FanDuel Sportsbook. Our job for today is to narrow down that list and let you know our top bets for the U.S. Open this week at Oakmont. Welcome on to Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, here to get you set for the U.S. Open by talking to Brandon Gdula. He is a senior managing editor for FanDuel Research. Check him out on Twitter at Gdula13. He is on Blue Sky at Gdula as well. All of his work at FanDuel.com/research. A lot of good stuff for the U.S. Open up there already. Brandon, happy U.S. Open week. How you doing today?
I'm great. I love the U.S. Open. I love whenever golf is difficult for the pros because golf's difficult for me. I thought I figured everything out. With my golf game personally, went out and played 9 holes last night. It was, pretty iffy, and it reminds me that I'll never have it figured out. So whenever I can see par being a good score for the pros, I love that. It's my favorite type of golf. So I'm excited. Easily my second favorite major, second favorite event of the whole year. And it's, just a bit down the road. I won't be there, but that's all right because, watching on TV, just as fun.
We'll get you out there. We can try to find a way to smuggle you into the grounds of Oakmont for this week. There's still time. We got a couple of days before things actually tee off on Thursday, and still time to break down these fascinating betting odds at FanDuel Sportsbook. Have seen some lengthening since our first show yesterday. Bryson DeChambeau plus 750 now. Rory McIlroy out to 12-1. We're going to talk about both those guys during the show for today, and then also get you our top bets, both outrights and other bets we like for this week. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast, breaking down the biggest sporting events on the calendar, letting you know what bets we're seeing as values here on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, you can find us there. But also, our golf shows are over on the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page. If you're watching YouTube, leave us a thumbs up there, but also make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page where you can already find our DFS breakdown for the U.S. Open. That went up yesterday, a full in-depth dive on the DFS field, our top picks, studs, value plays, and much more. FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page. We're there every Tuesday breaking down that week's PGA Tour event. Check out more content on the U.S. Open on that page as well, and subscribe both there and on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. High stakes, iconic moments. This is Major Golf, and FanDuel is your winning play because right now all customers can grab a profit boost every round of the U.S. Major. Boost your winnings on anything from 2 and 3 balls to round leaders to closest to the pin bets and even who you think will win it all. FanDuel is your go-to for betting the majors. Tee off with a variety of bet types and live bet as the tournament drama unfolds. Don't wait. Download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and swing for some green. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amounts. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chad, Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelpline.ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, this year's U.S. Open is taking place at Oakmont Country Club. Brandon, last opened the U.S. Open back in 2016. You got the Oakmont 2016 towel over your right shoulder for those watching on YouTube. What are the keys to success at this course?
No, that's for this year, but that's not.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
How'd you get that already?
Oh, they had them at my
you pop out there?
shop. Huh?
Oh, they're selling it down by you too?
Yeah, I mean, it's close enough, I guess. I don't know, but
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
We're fresh. The freshest content you could possibly imagine right here on Covering the Spread.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought that was clear. I wish I had, I don't know if I was watching golf in 2016, frankly. I think we started like 2017 and
I distinctly remember using spreadsheets for like the 2015 Open Championship.
Really? Has it been that long?
Yes. Wow. This was before we were like full-time coworkers. I remember, and I exchanged like NASCAR stuff with you to like bribe you effectively.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I don't know. My memory's not very good, so take that for what it's worth. But
I'll scroll back through my email and see if I can find these.
You still have emails from that? I probably do too, though. But
I've never deleted an email in my life unless it was incriminating.
And you yell at me for keeping my tabs open, man.
But they're red. They're marked as red. So it's like it's a task that's been accomplished, but it's still like I'm not deleting it. I need a paper trail for when I'm talking on a podcast with someone 10 years later and I can, fact check, hey, you were pretty high on Tommy Fleetwood back in 2015. What's up with that?
I'll try to get us back on the rails because this is meant to be a kind of straightforward look. You asked me a question about the course, what we need to know. This is not our other show, which you should definitely check out, our show from Monday, the Heat Check. But this one, we're going to try to keep it a little tighter. So I'll try to keep us on path like a good host would, even though I'm the guest here technically. So I can see Jim scrolling, searching through his emails. But yeah, Oakmont, look, this is probably not the first time you've listened or read anything this week for the U.S. Open, because it's the U.S. Open at a historic course, Oakmont, which is hosted more times than any other course. You probably know by now that this is a tough, difficult test. It's a par 70 over, almost 7,400 yards with tight fairways. Large greens, but really, really fast greens, about as fast as you get, about as large as we're going to get at any course. But winning scores at Oakmont in recent years, 2016 was -4, Dustin Johnson, but in 2007, +5 by Angel Cabrera. In 2016, there was a lot of rain, a lot of delays. There's some rain this week, so it could play a little bit softer. Golfers, technology, etc., a little bit better. So we could see, another underscore or under par winner. USGA is not really going for an over par winner. They kind of tried to make that clear so far this week. So what do we need to know? What matters? You just got to do everything well, I think, for this week. You're not going to fluke your way around. It's not about, you're going to need to get a couple bounces. Sure, you're going to need to make a couple putts that maybe just, hit the cup as opposed to rolling 12 feet past because these greens are so fast. But it's not going to take one shot to sort of go from 25th to first. It's not how it's going to work this week. You got to do everything. There's a couple short par fours. Those are going to be your scoring opportunities. Outside of that, it's a lot of long holes, really long par 3, number 8, almost 300 yards. Wasn't even the hardest hole in 2016, which is nuts. But, you're going to have the tight fairways. You're going to see the content. You're going to hear the quotes about the rough. It's about 5 inches, according to the GCSAA, which is longest in my database, probably by a pretty good margin. Saw a similar setup in terms of rough at Winged Foot in 2020 when Bryson and Matthew Wolff just basically nuked the ball off the tee and went down and hacked it out. Bryson winning by multiple shots there, but could be a somewhat similar test this week. But also on the flip side, you hear a lot of pros, guys in the field talking about this week. They say they really emphasize the importance of hitting fairways. And while the landing areas are tight, you can hit some of these fairways, and it's going to be beneficial to do so. Because, the thing that I think is going to separate Oakmont from some of these other courses where you can just hit it long and into the rough is you're going to get certain spots with some of these bunkers, some of these fairway bunkers where or the rough is just too thick or you get a bad lie. You're not going to be able to advance it. You're going to have to kind of just get it back on the fairway, waste the shot. So hitting fairways, I do think is important. Distance, though, I think is a little bit more important because it's going to correlate to things like club head speed, which is going to help you get out of the rough, advance the ball farther than your opponents, probably playing from farther back and still having similar lies because it's not graduated rough by any means. So what does all this mean? I mean, frankly, I don't think there's a thing you can do poorly and contend. Now, your archetype, your history could show you have a weakness, and maybe that weakness just isn't there this week. Maybe you struggle around the greens, but you have a good around the green week this week. Something like that. I don't think you're going to fake your way into a good driving week, which is why off the tee is actually the most predictable stat of the 4 strokes gained categories. But honestly, in terms of what we need to know, I think you have to do everything well. It's going to be a complete test of golf. I'm looking for strokes gained total as my number one stat. Just get the ball in the hole in as few strokes as possible. Get in, get out, however you can. But I think you're going to need the ball striking. I think you're going to need short game. I think between distance and accuracy, I'm still leaning distance because hitting fairways sounds great. They're still going to be tricky to hit. And whenever you do miss, and everyone's going to miss, being able to generate more club head speed is going to help you. So I would lean a little bit more distance, but realistically, I would rather just kind of look at strokes gained off the tee instead. So, I'm looking at strokes gained total with field strength adjustments, which you can find various places, including Data Golf, and then putting different weights on all 4 strokes gained categories individually, with approach being number 1, off the tee, putting, and around the green. Actually, around the green and putting in that order, kind of. So that's where I am. I'm not going to be talked out of, I'm not going to be talked into anything specific that you have to do well, because I think you have to do everything well.
Yeah. And I come down to the same place where we want just overall off the tee play because of what you were alluding to, where it is pretty penal to miss the fairways. And the fairways are not super wide either. So to me, that does wind up being the way to play things here. It's kind of nice to have a course that's not just strictly a bomber's paradise. I think that's a good setup for this week. I will say I did find your sheet for the 2015 PGA Championship Whistling Straits. You had highlighted Bubba Watson, Hideki Matsuyama, Zach Johnson, and some guy named Justin Thomas as DFS plays you like for that week. Maybe we'll talk more about one of those guys later on during the show. Before that, though, let's talk about some guys near the top of the odds board. Now, Scotty Scheffler, don't need to discuss a whole lot there because we know Scotty Scheffler is in tremendous form. He is plus 280 for a reason. The form for Rory McIlroy, very different. He is 12-1. And I kind of want to dive a bit more into Rory specifically, because when we talked yesterday, he was 11-1. And I was like, I kind of want to buy low. I don't want to buy low quite at 11-1. He's now lengthened to 12-1, getting my attention at least. So where are you on Rory, given the mix of really bad form, but also odds that are significantly longer than they were a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, it's tough because you would typically look at this and be like, well, man, this is such an obvious, situation. But I almost think I have to run down a bit of what Rory's gone through as a bit of a refresher, because the season's so long. It's kind of hard to remember. I mean, remember when Colin Morikawa was kind of just knocking on the door? We were there, and it's now we have no real interest. Although, again, if you need to hit fairways and stripe your irons, that's kind of interesting. But anyway, so just quickly, Rory won at Pebble. He won the Players. Of course, we all know he won the Masters. Got that career Grand Slam, got that off of his back. He was roughly, depending on when you looked, co-favorites with Scotty Scheffler entering the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow, where he had 4 wins in his career. And it kind of felt like Rory had a legitimate chance to sort of win the Grand Slam this year. But at the PGA, his driver failed testing. And news leaked that it did, and that was not supposed to happen. And I think it pretty clearly affected him. He was still 5th in distance, but 68th in accuracy to finish 34th in strokes gained off the tee for the week. He didn't play again until the RBC Canadian Open last week, when he lost 0.89 shots per round over 2 rounds before missing the cut off the tee. He was also bottom 10 in approach per round in his 2 rounds. And you could, and you and I are pretty quick to say it's 2 rounds. That's not Rory. But there's a little bit more going on with Rory that I think is relevant here. And going into the Canadian Open, he said, quote, "You have this event in your life that you've worked toward and it happens, sometimes it's hard to find the motivation to get back on the horse and go again. Like, that's telling. It's just thanks for being forthright. But then, and I'll paraphrase like the next thing he said after the tournament, but he was like, you come in to the RBC Canadian Open with the new driver thinking that there's going to be some problems, but you'll figure it out. And at Oakmont, what you need to do is hit fairways, which goes back to what I said about a lot of pros saying you got to hit fairways, but everyone wants to hit a fairway, but also hitting it farther is still going to be helpful in a lot of cases. And you're not necessarily going to have to hit driver. So maybe Roy could just hit 3-wood around and be fine. But he literally said, like, when I get driver clicking, everything falls into place. But, right now it isn't. And that's a concern. Again, this is all paraphrasing him, but that's like, pretty much what he said. You got to apply that, right? Like it's hard to go with someone even at 12-1 who's kind of like, yeah, I'm not there right now.
Yeah.
And to ask him to go out and defeat the field and defeat Scotty and Bryson at Oakmont, it's a pretty tall task. It's really hard to model. That said, the easy flip side is you're getting a guy who just won the Players, won the Masters, 12-1 to win the US Open. So personally, I'm not there at 12, but I'd have a hard time sitting here. And this will be a little bit trickier once my two outrights being at the top of the board. If you were to get to like 15, I mean, like, what's the number for you with Rory where you're just like, I mean, come on, if he's back, like, do you have a number in mind?
I hadn't, because I didn't think it'd be realistic that we would get there. So, like, usually I will go through that thought process because I want to be prepared. And I also it will make me more hesitant to bet other outrights. I'm like, okay, I know I might be adding Rory later. I want to keep my card a little bit more open so that I can afford to add him later. I would say 14-1 makes me itchy.
Yeah.
And I made the mistake of looking and yeah, it's a realistic opportunity. And I think honestly, even if he hadn't been saying those things, I would have still been hesitant. So it's not me just overreacting to him saying that. And I love that he's honest. And I do need to factor in those words. At least it's not an injury, but equipment is kind of not that dissimilar. I guess I'm just why can't you just take the club head you were using at Augusta, the one that got eventually taken out of play before the PGA Championship? Why can't you just take a newer version of that? I'm sure he's thought of that and he's decided, no, that's not the answer. So I don't know, man. It's tough.
There's a lot more to it than that, but we'll talk off air.
Yeah, I'm aware. It was a tongue-in-cheek kind of question, but
okay.
It's just because it's not just he's been bad since Augusta. He was talking about, you win this big tournament, it's hard to get motivation. He was good in the Texas, he was good at the Truist, which was after the Masters. The Zurich, he and Lowry kind of fiddled their way around to finish 12th. They didn't really do a whole lot there. The Truist, the irons weren't there, but the driver was, and that was before the driver ban. So it's the irons, I guess, specifically have not been there since Augusta. So maybe it's a motivation thing. I don't know. But once you're telling me, hey, 14-1, 1450 is a realistic outcome, it's well, God dang it. It actually makes me think about it, which I'm kind of annoyed about, Frank, because I thought I could just be yeah, this is not the week. I'll miss out. That's okay.
Yeah, it's a tough situation because you're literally battling a long-term sample and then a pretty steep drop-off.
Yeah.
Not just a steep drop-off with no explanation, but a steep drop-off with a pretty clear explanation.
Right.
And, we got Portrush coming up. I'm sure he's looking ahead to that as well. This is kind of the difficulty, but the beauty of golf betting too, because while it's extremely numbers based, if you want it to be, it's extremely not numbers based if you choose to go that route too. And like we talked about this yesterday from more of a daily fantasy standpoint, but if you go out and like you get Rory, who, and I'm hesitant to say this because while the betting odds were very similar between he and Scotty, Scotty was always the better golfer even this year without all the wins first, and now the wins are coming, and that's the type of stuff that we try to talk about is like wins are, descriptive, but how well you're playing is probably more important in terms of the underlying data. So I don't think that Rory should be plus 280, even if he won last week, because Scotty's still the better golfer.
Yeah.
So you get to that point of like, okay, if we have Rory pre-PGA Championship, where would he be? And now knowing that he's not that, where does he have to be? I feel like we're on the same page. We're like 14, 15 is that. And it's possible. I don't know. Maybe he's just not getting any attention, but it's such a fascinating case. But there's also another name in between Scotty and Rory that makes it a little bit harder just to say, yeah, I'll just take Rory at 12, because you got a big four this week, and 3 of them are either tailor-made for U.S. Opens or the best golfer that we've seen since Tiger Woods.
And the form for those other guys not as big of a concern, because the guys you're alluding to, Bryson DeChambeau and Jon Rahm, enter with good form. They both played very good golf at the PGA Championship. Rahm, I'm going to just go ahead and say effectively he was runner. We're going to call him runner-up. I know he didn't finish runner-up, but like he was the guy with like the second best odds to win that event. We'll call it that way. He's 12-1. DeChambeau plus 750, a bit of a lengthen from where he was yesterday at 7-1. What's your read on those guys? How are you viewing them at their current odds as things stand?
So I'm going to go to Data Golf here because they track live events and adjust for field strength. We got the majors. We got everything factored in here. If you go over every golfer's, we'll do 3 months just for some context. In that span, Scheffler's got 3 wins, Bryson 1, Rahm none. He hasn't won since September, but so strokes gained per round with field strength adjustments over the last 3 months. Scheffler's at a 3.41, which is disgusting. Bryson's at a 2.86, which is also pretty gnarly. And then you have Jon Rahm at a 2.17. And again, you kind of go back to like my perception this week is there's going to be a lot of carnage. You're going to see some big names miss the cut. And you have to be okay with that because you might just make a triple instead of a bogey because you get a bad lie in the rough. That's part of it. But over 72 holes, I do think that the best of the best are going to separate. And that really puts me on these 2 names. Unfortunately, Bryson at 750 is a little bit short, but I mean, if you just pinpoint and we stick with Bryson right now, he's won 2 of the last 5 U.S. Opens. He also won in 2020 at Winged Foot, which is getting a lot of comps to Oakmont for, reasons of long rough, just kind of nuke it out of the rough, get down there and try to make some putts. I have Bryson
getting a Matthew Wolff exacta in here with Bryson or no?
Yeah. Hope he's doing all right.
Me too.
But I have Bryson at plus 850 in my model, so 750 is not that far off, which is kind of interesting. Again, if he continues to lengthen, that's something I'm looking to monitor. And it's worth noting that he played here in 2016. He was T15. That's interesting. As we're going to speak of,
it was pre-Hulkening. So that was not Bryson. I guess he was Bryson. He's Bryfather now, I think is the way it goes.
I learned from Wikipedia that his nickname is the Bison, which I didn't know. But
I've never heard that.
So I think that Bryson is very intriguing for very obvious reasons. It's a super simple case to make. I don't think the number's as far off as it was when we talked Monday. It's 7-1 plus 750 is a lot different, just mentally even. But I'm actually more interested in Jon Rahm, who, again, we go back to what does it take to win a US Open? You have to do everything well. And like, that's Jon Rahm. He doesn't look like it, but he's one of the best short game players we've ever seen. And that's something that I think gets lost. It's also one of the things that separates guys like Scotty, even from like Bryson. It separates Scotty from like Rory a bit. I mean, Scotty's a like generational all-time iron player. So like maybe that's not fair, but like you look like Xander Schauffele, he's a great putter and he's got great around the green numbers. That's kind of Jon Rahm. Like there's more to being a superstar than just being a good ball striker. And Jon Rahm is the type of guy who has it. He's going to have to get in and out of, like, he's going to get in trouble. Everyone is. He's going to have to get out of trouble. He's going to have to show those soft hands, which he has. And like, these greens are super fast. Yes, it's going to impact putting, but it's also going to impact every time you're hitting into a green, whether it's an approach or a chip, it's going to run out. You got to kind of be able to navigate that. And honestly, this morning, Tuesday, I watched his press conference. He looked really calm and collected. He talked about like, yeah, in the past, like I would just get frustrated with things, not really, say it wasn't my fault, just getting unlucky. Now it's one thing to say that Tuesday, and it's another to like have it, be in the forefront of your mind Thursday through Sunday, whenever you get some bad breaks, that it's just part of it because everyone's going to get them. But like Rahm has not been Jon Rahm to me in majors for a while. And he's been T14 at Augusta, as you mentioned, like T8 at the PGA, but really was probably runner up. And I got to be honest with you, when Jon Rahm's in contention, I'm fearful. Like I see Jon Rahm making those 12-foot putts to save par, just pouring them dead center, doing a little like fist pump. And like, you're like, oh man, he's not going away. So you need someone in my mind to run down Scotty to beat Bryce, like maybe pull a Rory in the final group against Bryson. And like, I'm just going to stonewall you and Bryson's going to kind of slip or something like that. Now I'm not guaranteeing that these are the only names who are eligible for the final group, but like Jon Rahm right now or Rory in the final group, like who do you think emerges there if they were in the final pairing?
Right now, probably Rahm.
Like that, and that's kind of.
But who do I think is like more likely to be in the final pairing, all things considered? Like when I consider
Rahm.
like
Rahm or Rory, it's just maybe we'll talk offline too. Yeah. But I love Jon Rahm. I think that the biggest knock against Rory is that he's going backwards, and Rahm, Bryson, and Scotty are all kind of rocketing forward.
Sure. And I think that makes sense. Okay. So you like Rahm at 12-1. What other outrights are you betting for this week?
Xander Schauffele at 22. I know that that's two favorites, but I don't really want to have a lot of interest in long shots this week. I think some of the better golfers are going to be the ones who are at the top of the leaderboard. That extends to kind of Schauffele, but I've warmed up to Ludwig a bit. I've kind of really warmed up to Colin Morikawa having a good week. If he just hits, almost every fairway, plays well. You want to talk about someone who just can grind pars and be in contention? That's like Tommy Fleetwood, finally. Patrick Cantlay, quietly a great U.S. Open player. I think there's a lot of names you're going to have to knock off. So I'm not looking for long shots beyond 50 to 60. Like I'd probably cap everything like 60-1 just based on the name value. But Xander, I think, is getting a little overlooked even at 22, which probably feels a little short for people who are a little more results based. But right now, like Xander's playing better golf than people realize. I just don't like the idea. I don't agree with the concept that he has not played good golf in 2025. He's got just one top 10 finish. Sure. That was a T8 at the Masters. But in 2025, the calendar year, he's been a positive in all three tee to green stats. He's been neutral, losing 0.04 per round with the putter in 2025. However, on tour this season, Xander is a 54th percentile putter from within 15 feet. That's usually the range where you have some control over making them. 54th percentile, actually pretty low for him. He's a 6th percentile putter from beyond that this year. This is not the kind of like play of, oh, well, he's going to start pouring in birdies. Like he's probably going to make more long par saves because he's one of the best long-term putters we have on tour. I would probably say the best without looking like last 3 years out of the top 10 studs that we have, the best putter. And he's one of the best US Open players we've ever seen. He's played in 8 US Opens, never finished worse than T14. So over the last 5 years of US Opens, he trails only Rory McIlroy, which is something I guess we glossed over. Rory being a phenomenal US Open player too. But Xander trails only Rory in total strokes gained over the last 5 years of US Open data. And over the last 2 years, he is tied with Scottie Scheffler as the best overall major player. So I think Xander has had a season where he's not put everything together in an individual week. He's got 2 majors to his name. He's top 12 in ball speed. He's going to be able to get out of trouble. I think that Xander has a lot going for him that people aren't really giving him credit for. I wish it was maybe 25 instead of 22, but getting a 2-time major winner with everything still clicking to me at 22 is appealing.
Yeah, we were talking before about the breaking point for Rory, and I already have a pretty full outright card that I prefer not to add to. Yeah. Rory's kind of forcing my hand. The best counterpoint to that is saying Xander's here at 22. Yeah. That to me is my biggest pause in betting Rory, because I do think that the rationale is there for Xander. He's 22-1, John Rahm 12, your 2 outrights for this week. I'm sticking with the same 2 I discussed in yesterday's show. I was kind of hoping that Bryson might lengthen a bit more. We'll find a better way to bet him later on. Was hoping maybe we get Xander out to 25 and I could potentially go with him. But instead, we're going to go with the 2 guys I discussed. Those being Joaquin Niemann at 30. Please hold your groans until later. And Justin Thomas at 40-1 as well. Niemann, I know he's been really bad in majors. Prior to the PGA Championship, Joaquin Niemann had never been better than, I believe, 16th in a major in his entire career. So that's a pretty serious detriment, given that, as we've seen, it's a different kind of golfer who can compete in majors versus a guy who can win Live Virginia or Live Mexico City. It's a different breed. And Niemann hasn't proven to be that kind of guy. But he did finish 8th at the PGA Championship, despite not really doing well off the tee. Gained 0.004 strokes off the tee there. Gained 2.03 on approach and 0.96 with the putter at Quail Hollow. So he was genuinely good with his putter and with his irons, which is exactly what you want for a guy who also we know can absolutely nuke it off the tee. The Masters finished 29th there primarily because the putter was not on, lost about a half stroke per round putting, which of course is a risk. But it was an improvement for him. There's been some upward movement for Niemann. The irons have been phenomenal in majors ever since he kind of had that breakout on the Live Tour. It hasn't been the irons that have really dragged him down. It's been other stuff. So I think that I don't think he's some sort of someone who's mentally weak who can't get it done. Maybe he is. I don't know. I can't get inside his psyche. But I don't think the sample on him with his current form is big enough for me to say he can't do it. Does it make me want to vomit the fact that I bet Joaquin Niemann to win a freaking major in 2025 when he's proven so many times I probably shouldn't do that? Yeah, I'd be a little yarf. It's coming up because of that. But I think the number 30-1 is long enough. So I'm going to stick with Niemann 30-1 for this week. Other guys mentioned is Justin Thomas at 40-1. He's lost strokes and approach each of the past 2 events, which is not good. But he still gained 0.7 off the tee at the Memorial. So I don't think he's hurt or anything like that. And that's a concern of JT. He's had some injuries in the not too distant past. So I want to keep that in mind. But before the Memorial, before this two event downturn, was second at the Truist. He had the win at the RBC Heritage. He ranks 4th in this field in true strokes gained the past 6 months behind Scottie, Rory, and Bryson. Those 3 guys, all 12-1 or shorter. Joaquin Niemann is actually 5th in that number too. So I guess I'm just betting based on true strokes gained, which kind of goes back to what you're saying. Bet the good golfers, but I do think it makes sense with these guys here. If you I look at strokes gained as stabilization, which looks at a more recent sample for the ball striking stats and a longer term sample for the short game stats, because those take longer to stabilize. JT ranks 7th in that number for me. Yeah, he's been bad in the majors this year. Was not good at Augusta, which he never is. Missed cut the PGA Championship, even though he had a win at Quail Hollow back in 2017. So it's not just hey, he's bad at Augusta. It's he also is bad at the course that he's won at before. But we also know that JT has like the stones to compete in a major. So I'm not really worried about the performance in 2 majors so far this year when the overall form has been good. So I'm going to take Niemann at 30, JT 40 as my win bets this week. Any thoughts for you on those 2 guys?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking like Rory hangover, but JT won TGL this year with the Atlanta Drive. So maybe that's part of it. But no, I think I would rather go JT to win at 40 than Niemann at 30. I don't think it's mental for Niemann. I think it's just maybe more of like, I think Niemann's a phenomenal athlete and less of a, and I'm not qualified enough to comment on that. It's just my sort of like, I'm being honest here. Yeah. Like Fleetwood, I feel like in a final group against Niemann, I'm like, Fleetwood's going to get in and out of trouble better than Niemann could. Like, that's kind of the difference for me. But data wise, there's no reason not to like Niemann. I like him too, but just not necessarily for an outright.
Okay, so let's move beyond the outrights then and talk about what you're cooking over here. What non-outrights do you like for this week in the U.S. Open?
I got to get some top-end region bets for majors. It's my favorite way to go about things. But Joaquin Niemann, top South American, minus 140, but it's not a very powerful group overall compared to how good Niemann is. It's Nico Echeverria, Emiliano Grillo, and Jonathan Vegas. Over the last 50 rounds, according to Data Golf, nobody in that trio between Grillo, Echeverria, and Vegas is averaging better than 0.2 true strokes gained per round. And Niemann's at a 1.9 in that span. So when I modeled it out, I saw value here, even at minus 140. It's always fun in golf to get your long numbers, your big plus numbers, but value's value. And I see it here with Niemann. I think it's a way to get access to Niemann in a way that is very tangible and not that daunting to beat out these 3 guys with the form that they're in compared to Niemann. So I like that one. And as you mentioned, Niemann finally kind of broke through a bit at a major. And then another top end region bet I like, Minwoo Lee, top Australian, plus 330. So I've got Minwoo around plus 316. So Minwoo 316 coming. He's got the second best ball speed on tour this year. Again, I already kind of talked about why I think that's important or could be important. He's quietly been a good US Open player, T27, T5, and T21 the last 3 years, while gaining distance and accuracy in all of them with his driver. The putter's super cold right now for Minwoo Lee, but he's an 87th percentile putter this year from within 15 feet, but just 33rd beyond that. So you would expect some regression in his favor. And great wedge player, great chipper, Dr. Chipinski. I think the wedge play is going to help him out a lot. Not very intimidated by the rest of this group. So I like Minwoo Lee plus 330, top Australian. And then not top Australian, but and not also not top Australian.
Importantly, though, one quick narrative. I talked before about how I found the sheet you sent me for the 2015 PGA Championship, Whistling Straits. The guy who won that was Jason Day. And so you're betting against Jason Day here. And I just want you to know that, like, the narrative supports Jason Day. Just letting you know.
Okay. Well, you ruined my Australia to Austria transition here.
Sorry. Man. The people are distraught.
But I like Joseph Sepp Straka to finish top 10 this week. His odds have shortened a ton in terms of the outright market. I was searching
under the top end region markets. I was all ready to go. No, tragic.
Top 10 plus 360 for one of the best iron players in the field. Third over the last 50 rounds, according to Data Golf. One of the best putters. He's 12th in that span as well. Got a recent win under his belt at the Truist, which is on the other side of Pennsylvania. Third at the Memorial as well. Did miss the cut at the PGA and the Masters. I'm not glossing over that, but striped the irons as usual at Augusta. Actually drove and putted really well at the PGA, just didn't kind of have it all together. And, he doesn't have the best US Open history, but he's averaging 1.3 shots better per round in 2025 than any other year of his career. He should be able to hit fairways. He's 11th in the field over the last 50 rounds in fairways gained with field strength adjustments factored in there. Should be able to use those top 5 irons, top 12 putting to play some solid U.S. Open golf. So I like Sepp Straka, top 10 plus 360.
Okay, so you're non-outright. Sepp Straka, top 10 plus 360. Got Joaquin Niemann, top South American, minus 140. And Min Woo Lee, top Australian, at plus 330. I've got a top 10 that's actually right beneath yours, so I'm going to start with there. That's Corey Connors, who is currently 4-1 for a top 10. I kind of like Connors overall this week, just because like he's a guy who's a good overall golfer. He does have some flaws, which is why he is 4-1 for a top 10 versus anything shorter, but just good all-around golfer. 8th at the Masters, 18th at the PGA Championship, also 9th at the U.S. Open last year. The ball striking for Connors has been good for a very long time, but has also been good in the short run. So the current form, solid. The short game is the downside for Connors, and he did lose in both arenas last week at his home Grand Prix, in his national major, or his national tournament. Chipping has been a negative 5 straight weeks for Connors, so he's not a lock by any means, but 4-1's pretty good for someone with his ball striking abilities, and I do think he's a good course fit as a guy who has good placement off the tee, is not short. He's not long either, but he's not short. I think that he makes a lot of sense. I like Connors 4-1 for a top 10. My other finishing position for this week is going to be on Keegan Bradley. I'm going to go with a top 20 for Keegan. The putting scares me enough. I'd prefer to go with a top 20 versus going with a more aggressive market. But I think the plus 230 for a top 20 kind of takes into account the flaws he has there. Every other aspect of Keegan Bradley's game is really, really good. If you look at the past 6 months in Data Golf's true strokes gained, Keegan Bradley is at plus 0.34 or better in all 3 categories from tee to green. It's really just the putting that is dragging him down. If you look at the past 6 months overall, even accounting for the putting, Keegan ranks 12th in true strokes gained in that time. Everybody else who is above him in that metric is 50-1 or shorter to win, whereas Keegan is 80-1. He was 7th at the Memorial last week, 8th at the PGA Championship. Look at last year at the majors. He was consistently right around this number, 22nd, 18th, 32nd in cut. And again, he is a guy who's going to gain from tee to green. Is he going to be able to handle these very, very, very scary, very high stimp meter, absurd greens? Maybe not, but that's why we're going for a top 20. You can have some snafus and still potentially cash this bet for us. So plus 230 for Keegan to finish top 20 is pretty attractive for me. The final non-outright that I want to go with is going to take advantage of this little no-sweat offer that FanDuel has going for a first-round leader bet. You get a no-sweat bet on first-round leaders there. And this is going to be my exposure to Bryson DeChambeau, 18-1. You could go longer with someone else, given you got a no-sweat bet on it. I think that's good roster, good bankroll management. But I just want exposure to Bryson. And to me, this is a fun way to get it because it gives me 1 round of exposure to Bryson's irons versus 4 rounds. And that's the drawback for me of betting him to win at plus 750 is the irons haven't been amazing, but the driver is so good. He's always been good as a putter, and he can work his way around the greens too. With Bryson, I think that it makes sense to consider him to win this event at plus 750, given that he has all those strengths. He is somehow accurate off the tee, despite mashing it as far as he does. The putter is what it is. But again, the irons scare me enough where I think that this single round bet is more attractive than going with the full 4 rounds. If Bryson were to lengthen, sure, I'd be willing to bet him outright, but I'm getting a no sweat bet at FanDuel Sportsbook, getting 18-1 for him to give me 1 good round at the irons and do what he does elsewhere within his game. So if I'm getting exposure to Bryson DeChambeau this week, I want to be via him to lead the first round 18-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook, taking advantage of that no sweat bet. Any thoughts for you on DeChambeau, Connors, or Keegan Bradley for this week?
They are 3 of the 4 top. Well, I don't actually find value in the first round leader market this week, but they're 3 of the top 4 best bets if I'm willing to kind of get into that one. So, yeah.
Didn't realize that. Okay. I guess I have access to your model, so I could have realized it, but didn't. That's cool. I will actually take that. Do you like any of them first round leader?
I would probably go Connors. I think first round leader is interesting always as a way, and I'm not saying you pair every outright you have with first round leader, but I don't mind us, like, if I'm doing a partial unit on a long shot to begin with, I don't mind a little bit on first round leader for a little bit of peace of mind if someone gets out to a good, because a golf tournament's not over after one day.
Yeah.
Just not how it works. But over the last 6 months, and these are going to be small samples, but I also don't want to dig back too far. Best first round strokes gain numbers, Scotty Scheffler, followed by Bryson, Morikawa, but Keegan is, let's see here, 6th, and well, Connors was here, but don't see him now. 16th. So I don't mind any of those names. I think I'd probably go Connors first and foremost, but maybe Bryson could go wire to wire. Who knows?
Okay, I love it. So again, we got Bryson DeChambeau, first round leader, 18-1. Corey Connors for a top 10 at 4-1, and Keegan Bradley for a top 20 at plus 230 on FanDuel Sportsbook for this week. That's all we got to get you set for the U.S. Open, both across the heat check and covering the spread. Been a fun week. I think it should be a fun week of golf as well out at Oakmont. So get those bets in, get those DFS lineups in as well before things tee off on Thursday. Brandon, appreciate the time as always. Good luck to you with your bets and your DFS plays as well. Although again, not in our head-to-head, and we'll talk to you in the very near future.
Always excited to be here. Looking forward to the U.S. Open, and then we just got the Open, and then majors are toast for the men.
But hey, we get the reconfigured tour championship again. So I guess there's that to look forward to. You can find Brandon on X at Gdula13. He is on Blue Sky at Gdula. I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can also find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin. As always, don't forget to check out our DFS breakdown, the Heat Check, up on the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page and the FanDuel Research podcast feed as well. We'll talk to you all soon. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.